There's a moment, quiet, almost ordinary, when everything can suddenly change. A flashing light in your rearview mirror, a firm knock on your window, a voice that sounds calm but carries authority. And in that moment, most people don't realize something critical is already happening. Not just an interaction, but a legal process. A boundary is being tested. Rights are either being exercised or quietly surrendered. What if the difference between walking away safely and facing serious consequences comes down to what you understand in those first few seconds? Have you ever wondered what actually protects you when you're dealing with police, and whether you would know what to do in that moment? Take a second and think about it. If you were stopped right now, would you confidently know your rights, or would you just go along with whatever happens? Let me know in the comments, because that question is more important than most people realize. Now here's the truth that often gets overlooked. In most modern legal systems, especially those influenced by constitutional law traditions, there isn't just one single law that protects citizens during police encounters. Instead, it's a network of rights, carefully built over decades, sometimes centuries, through court decisions, statutes, and constitutional principles. These protections are not abstract ideas. They are practical, enforceable limits placed on government power. But here's where it gets interesting. Those protections only work if they're understood, because the law doesn't operate like a shield that automatically activates. It operates more like a tool, one that must be recognized and used correctly. Let's step into a scenario. Imagine you're driving home late at night. The road is quiet. You're not speeding. You're not doing anything unusual. And then suddenly flashing lights appear behind you. Your heart rate changes. Your mind starts racing. Did I do something wrong? This is where the law begins to matter. Police officers, in most jurisdictions, need a legal basis to stop you. This is often called reasonable suspicion. It doesn't mean they need proof of a crime, but they do need specific, articulable reasons to believe something may be wrong. This principle comes from long-established legal standards designed to prevent arbitrary stops. Without it, anyone could be stopped at any time for no reason. Now think about that for a second. The difference between a lawful stop and an unlawful one isn't always visible. It's not something you can immediately see or feel, but it's there, operating in the background. And that's just the beginning. Once a stop occurs, another layer of protection comes into play. Your right to remain silent. This is one of the most widely known rights, but also one of the most misunderstood. Remaining silent doesn't mean being uncooperative. It means you are not obligated to answer questions that could incriminate you. Courts have consistently upheld this principle because it protects individuals from being compelled to build a case against themselves. But here's the subtle detail many people miss. You often have to clearly invoke that right. Simply staying quiet without explanation can sometimes be interpreted in different ways, depending on the situation. So the law gives you the protection, but it also expects you to understand how to use it. Now let's go deeper. Another critical protection is the requirement for probable cause when it comes to searches. This is where things can become complicated quickly. If an officer wants to search your vehicle, your home, or your belongings, they generally need either your consent, a warrant, or a legally recognized exception. And this is where real-world encounters often take a turn. Because in many situations, officers may ask for consent. Do you mind if I take a look? It sounds casual, polite even, but legally, that question carries enormous weight. Because if you say yes, you are effectively waiving a major constitutional protection in that moment. And then think about that. How many people fully understand the implications of that one simple question? And how many say yes without realizing they had the right to say no? This is not about encouraging conflict. It's about awareness. The law doesn't require you to consent, but it does allow you to choose. Now let's consider another layer, the right to legal counsel. If a situation escalates and you are detained or arrested, you have the right to consult with a lawyer. This is a cornerstone of fair legal systems around the world. The idea is simple but powerful. No one should face the complexity of the legal system alone, especially when their freedom may be at stake. But here's where timing matters. Invoking your right to a lawyer early can significantly shape what happens next. Once again, it's not just about having the right, it's about knowing when and how to use it. And this brings us to something even more important: the balance between authority and accountability. Police officers are given significant powers for a reason: to maintain public safety, enforce laws, and respond to emergencies. But those powers are not unlimited. They are balanced by legal safeguards designed to protect citizens from misuse or overreach. Courts play a central role in maintaining this balance. Over time, landmark rulings have clarified what officers can and cannot do, shaping the boundaries of lawful conduct. For example, courts have repeatedly emphasized that evidence obtained through unlawful searches may be excluded from trial. This principle, often referred to as the exclusionary rule, reinforces the importance of following proper procedures. Think about the impact of that. It means that even if evidence exists, it cannot always be used if it was obtained in violation of your rights. That's how seriously the legal system takes these protections. Now let's bring this back to everyday reality. Most police encounters are routine. They end without incident. And for many people, that's where their understanding of the system begins and ends. But for others, those encounters can become complicated. Misunderstandings happen. Emotions rise. Decisions are made quickly, sometimes under pressure, and in those moments knowledge becomes critical. Not theoretical knowledge, practical understanding. Knowing when you are being detained versus when you are free to leave. Knowing the difference between a request and an order. Knowing that you can ask calmly and respectfully, am I being detained or am I free to go? These are not confrontational actions, they are clarifying ones. They help define the situation in legal terms, not just emotional ones, and that distinction can make all the difference. Now consider another angle. Why do these protections exist in the first place? They didn't appear overnight. They were shaped by history, by cases where rights were challenged, by moments where the balance of power needed correction. Over time, societies recognized that without clear limits, authority could become unchecked. So laws were developed, refined, and tested, not to weaken law enforcement, but to strengthen justice itself, because true justice requires both effective enforcement and strong protections. Without one, the other cannot function properly. Now here's something worth reflecting on. In many cases, people don't realize their rights were violated until much later, sometimes after legal consequences have already begun. At that point, the conversation shifts from prevention to damage control. And that's a much harder position to be in. So the real question becomes this. Would you rather rely on fixing a problem later or avoiding it entirely through awareness? Because the law is not just something that applies after something goes wrong. It's something that shapes what happens in real time. Every question asked, every response given, every decision made, all of it exists within a legal framework. And understanding that framework changes how you experience those moments. It brings clarity where there might otherwise be confusion. It replaces uncertainty with informed choices. And perhaps most importantly, it reinforces something fundamental. You are not powerless in these situations. The law is not just a tool of authority. It is also a system of protection. But like any system, it works best when people understand it. So as you think about this, consider your own perspective. Have you ever been in a situation where you weren't sure what your rights were? Would you handle it differently now, knowing what you know? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because these conversations matter more than people think. And as we step back and look at the bigger picture, one thing becomes clear. The law that protects citizens during police encounters is not just written in statutes or court decisions. It lives in the interaction itself, in the questions asked, in the answers given, in the awareness carried into that moment. It's a quiet presence, but a powerful one. And the next time you find yourself in that situation, the difference won't just be what the officer does. It will be what you understand. And that understanding might be the most important protection of all.